is up, everybody? This is Mean Dean from the Outsiders Podcast, now known as the KliqPodcast, and we have officially made our way into the B's for Mean Dean's A through Z pay-per-view review. First, stopping at WCW Bunkhouse Stampede 1988. Now, I was really excited about this one, really excited to review it because all the ones I've been reviewing have been either in the 2000s or maybe even one in the late 90s. And everybody loves the late 90s, but the 80s are considered like the golden age of wrestling. And that's something that I definitely want to cover here as well. And there's some familiar faces, some great wrestling. So let's jump into that right now. And before we get to that point, though, I want to go ahead and do some quick house cleaning. Go ahead and mention some of our updates here. So for those of you who've been following us on Facebook, we have given the middle finger to Facebook several times. We call it flipping the bird or doing the Stevie to Facebook. Essentially what's happening with Facebook is they're not allowing us to change our name from the Outsiders Podcast to the KliqPodcast. Part of our brand is KliqPod Inc. I don't know why. I'm not sure. They said that one of their guidelines is they can't mislead the actual viewers and the followers. That's not misleading. And again, thanks Facebook, you can go fuck yourself as far as I'm concerned. We are going to go ahead and switch our channel over, and we're going to switch our pages over. The Facebook page will be changed to the KliqPodcast, and we'll be notifying you. That will likely be Mania Monday is when we do that. And I'll keep reminding you guys during Mean Dean's A through Z pay-per-view review, as well as JG's Monday Night Raw, Tuesday Night SmackDown Live reviews as well. And he'll also be dropping some bios, some wrestler bios, so make sure you take a look for that. WCW Bunkhouse Stampede 1988 was a great pay-per-view, really. It was a little strange if you are, let's say, a millennial and you go back to watch this. It's going to be hard for you to kind of watch because it's very catch-as-catch-can wrestling. JR was doing commentary, which was kind of cool. The commentary, though, was garbage. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's not necessarily JR's fault. He actually looked pretty frustrated with his color guy, and I'm not sure who the color guy was. I know they mentioned his name, but he was awful. And he kept interrupting JR and talking about things that had nothing to do with the pay-per-view itself. It was pretty funny. And Tony Schiavone is doing ring announcing, and he has a sweet mullet and a super sweet porn stash. So I'd suggest checking it out just for that reason. Match number 1, Bobby Eaton with Jim Cornette as his manager versus Nikita Koloff for the TV title. Now, Nikita Koloff is a bruiser. He's a Bruiser Brody type. Not as hardcore as Bruiser Brody, but he is definitely one of those guys who will kick your ass. I mean, it's not hard to say. They're hard. And man, Jim Cornette, he is running this manager heel angle hard. At one point, I'm pretty sure he called Nikita Koloff a bald douche, which was awesome. But the thing is the announcing and the crowd, and the feel's just very different. So when you look at it, it's going to feel funny. It's almost going to feel like New Japan Pro Wrestling. New Japan Pro Wrestling is very much commentated as a sports event. And the crowd is usually very civil and very quiet, and they enjoy the show, and you can hear everybody in the ring. It's the same thing, really. But man, Cornette was really running that heel angle. It was pretty awesome. And the pace is pretty slow in these matches, too. That's something you have to expect. A lot of holds. Just an unbelievable amount of holds. That's 80s wrestling. But the characters is what made it really good. And the other part that I kind of miss from the 80s that they don't really do much anymore is play off the ref towards the rules. So you'd have some guy like pulling his hair saying, "Oh, he pulled my hair." And it is what it is. But I thought that was kind of a cool play off of it. There's some great action outside. I mean, there's only concrete, and there's a lot of room between the barricade and the ring. And they're throwing each other on the concrete. It looks pretty rough, so that's something I'd also go back and check out as well. And, one of my other notes in here is that just Cornette's a fucking man. Honestly, he was awesome in this. He totally played up the heel persona that he needed to play up. The match went the distance, though, and one thing you guys need to realize is in this era, matches had time limits, and the ring announcers were the ones calling out the time limits, saying how much time is left. So Schiavone had a full-time job that night. He didn't just go out there and announce the match and the people who were in the match. He actually went out there and announced how much time is left on the clock. And the first couple matches were about 50 or about like 30-minute time limits. And this one, the Nikita Koloff Bobby Eaton one, went the full distance. Midnight Express comes out to destroy Koloff. That I actually have a picture right here in my TOP lounge with Jim Cornette, the Midnight Express, and the tag team titles. Smoky Mountain Wrestling, New League, and Old Tradition. So it's kind of cool. Winner is a draw, and a draw means that the person who had the title previous to this is the title holder, which was Nikita Koloff. This next match I actually really enjoyed. It was Larry Zbyszko versus Barry Windham for the Western States Heritage title. Now, this was really cool. So number one, who the fuck names their title the Western States Heritage title? Super interesting, right? The other part too is that if you've watched WCW in the history, Larry Zbyszko is one of the commentators, and I believe he did color along with Mike Tenay, right next to Tony Schiavone. But he was in there wrestling, and man, his character was so good. And he had this, I don't know if it was like a valet or if it was a manager or something, and her name was Baby Doll, but she was hard, dude. Like, she was constantly telling him how to do his moves, get up, all these. It was crazy. Like, she was awesome. And Larry Zbyszko's entrance music was super 80s. I'm talking about hot blue and hot pink lights and the music. It was amazing, amazing. For somebody who was born in the 80s, that was really cool to see. And again, it was very hold-oriented, very character. There was just a lot of character play in the ring, especially for Zbyszko being a heel. But when they get outside, it just gets brutal. I mean, I wouldn't say it's like hardcore like ECW, but man, it's rough. Like, they're really hitting each other. And towards the end, there was a great back and forth, and really told the story about the rivalry. I had no prior knowledge about this rivalry with Windham and Zbyszko, but the story they told in the ring told me all I needed to know about that, and that's something we're missing from wrestling today. Ref is out, Baby Doll with the heel, and I don't mean like she's playing a heel. I mean, she took her fucking heel off, threw it to Zbyszko, boom. 1, 2, 3, Larry Zbyszko knew. Western States Heritage title holder. When it went to the next match, which was Ric Flair versus Road Warrior Hawk for the NWA title, the whole thing, right? They actually said, WWE Network said there were some technical difficulties. They're presenting it in its most full form possible. So that was kind of interesting. I haven't seen that on the network, but that kind of shows you how rare the footage is. It almost gives it a little bit more of an edge to want to watch. And J.J. Dillon is Ric Flair's manager, walking around again. If you've seen WCW, you'll know J.J. Dillon very well. But man, LOD, right? Road Warrior Hawk. Just dominating the hell out of Ric Flair at this point. And Rick just overselling like crazy, which I love to see. If you're born in one of the generations that recently came, you won't really get it. You really have to know what wrestling was back then in the Golden Age to really appreciate it and understand it. But there's this one point where, I don't know what Hawk did. It was a kitchen sink or something, but I think he just grabbed his knee. Looked like he was actually really hurt. And then Flair, of course, Flair is going to target limbs. He's going to take you out. One of my notes on here, though, too, that I thought was very interesting and very noteworthy was there are 4 matches on this card. This match itself for the NWA title had a 60-minute time limit, which basically makes Iron Man matches look like shit. So the one thing I want to say on this podcast is if you respect Ric Flair for paving the path for all the people we see today, that's fair. Go back, watch WCW, watch NWA wrestling, and you will have a far greater respect for guys like Ric Flair because they're literally wrestling 30 minutes to an hour to over an hour every night, and you just don't see that anymore. You don't get that anymore, and that's really crazy to see. So mad respect for these guys, for real, especially the 80s guys who had to go out there, work, 200 nights a year or something like that, and put on these crazy, hour and 30-minute matches, and then you go do it the next night. That's just insane to me. So huge, huge respect for Flair. To go back to Flair's sells, it's so insane. I can't even describe it, really. He's screaming so loud that you almost can't even hear the fans at that point reacting. It's insane. wouldn't you know, Flair gets busted open, and it's nasty, as it should be. And Hawk hits his crazy superplex, which is crazy for Hawk. I mean, I know he's super athletic, but it was kind of cool to see. And then Dylan comes in, hits Hawk with a chair, and then Flair blasts Hawk with a chair, and the ref comes back up, and Flair uses a chair again, gets disqualified purposefully. So your winner is Road Warrior Hawk. Flair did it on purpose. Again, great heel, great wrestler. I always rank my wrestlers based on my favorites, personality, etc., etc., etc. After watching WCW Bunkhouse Stampede 1988, Flair has moved up in my ranking. I know that Stone Cold's number one. You know, I have a few others that we'll get to at a later point. We'll probably even do it during our live YouTube show for WrestleMania. But Flair definitely moved up the ranks after this. Match number 4, the Bunkhouse Stampede cage match. Now, again, I have to say there's just 4 matches on the card. And this is an over 2-hour-long pay-per-view. That's insane to me. Because when I go back and review WWE's matches, let's just say throw out there Armageddon 2005. I mean, there's 7 or 8 matches on there. Plus all the in-betweens. And that's a 3-hour pay-per-view. It's pretty interesting to think about. But man, this Stampede cage match was insane. When you think about cage matches now, you think, okay, I'm either going to get some brawlers in there, just maybe a singles match, brawlers, a fight it out, somebody pins, whatever. The whole point of this is you had to be thrown out of the cage through the door over the top to eliminate the person. That's what was insane, and that's what I loved about it. I thought that was super cool. In this match, Dusty Rhodes versus Tully Blanchard versus Ivan Koloff versus the Warlord versus Arn Anderson versus Lex Luger versus Barbarian versus Road Warrior Animal. That is a hell of a cast for the late 80s. And that is a hell of a lot of brute in that ring. So you're not going to expect to see these jump off the cage moments. No Superfly Snuka moments here. No, this is going to be straight out beat the shit out of everybody moments. One note here, though, that I wanted to bring up as well. Arn Anderson wears a shirt. I believe it's a Four Horsemen shirt. And he's got a straight up midriff. It is incredible. It's like cut off to the belly, so his belly's hanging out. I fucking love Arn Anderson. He's so awesome. So again, elimination only over the top or through the door. That's the way it was meant to be. The only caveat is that if you're out of the cage, you're out entirely. So remember that. And immediately looking at Ivan Koloff, he has some rough scars on his head. I mean, this dude's been through some shit already. And I didn't put a lot of in-betweens because, again, this is hold-oriented. This is just punch-you-in-the-face-oriented. But Anderson gets busted open pretty quickly. Then pretty much everybody else gets busted open, so they're all bleeding. And Dream takes... Everybody's wearing... First of all, everybody's wearing a weight belt. The Dream takes his off. Dusty Rhodes starts swinging it around like a fucking maniac and literally hitting people with it. It was brutal. Koloff is the first one to get out over the top of the cage, which is crazy. He's a big guy. For him to fall that far, that was pretty insane. Animal and Warlord out at the same time through the door. They're both battling for advantage and for placement, and they both get knocked out. And I'm starting to think, how the hell has Tully Blanchard lasted this long? That's crazy. At least, if anything, because they blew up Road Warrior Animal. They're saying, oh my gosh, this is the guy who's won more Stampede cage matches than anybody. Animal's out. Anderson he is working his ass off to get Lex out of that cage, and he's struggling. And Tully and Anderson and Lex start to struggle, but then they all fall out together through the door. And then now I'm starting to think, how the fuck has Barbarian lasted this long? You ever see Barbarian in early 90s WWE? He's a tag team. He didn't even go anywhere. When he went WCW in the mid-90s, he didn't go anywhere. And he's basically he has outlasted most of the Four Horsemen. In fact, actually, he's outlasted all of the Four Horsemen in this. However, who got the dub? Rest in peace, your boy, Dusty Rhodes, the Dream. Great match, super brutal match, and really great pay-per-view. I really challenge, you know how they have Tide Pod challenges and burn your arm stove challenges? Let's just say this. I challenge you guys to go to the WWE Network and watch old programming. It's not going to be always easy to sit through, but it's certainly great to learn the history and the heritage of where this is coming from. So I definitely challenge all of you young guys to go see that, as well as WrestleMania 34, the TOP live show. KliqPod Inc., the KliqPodcast, the KliqPod fam. We need you there. We're going to be taking requests. We're going to be talking about the best matches. We're going to be talking about our year as a podcast between the two WrestleManias. We're going to be talking about all sorts of stuff, so I definitely want you guys to be there. Ask whatever questions you want. We'll shout you out. Call us. I mean, shit, even if you call us on Facebook, Messenger, we'll even put you on the show. All right? So again, do not forget, we are on Podomatic.com, which is automatically linked to Patreon.com, iTunes, and we are also on YouTube. Don't forget to check out JG and his Monday Night Raw review, as well as his Tuesday Night SmackDown Live review, and he'll also be covering Fastlane as well, the pay-per-view. So do not forget about that. That will be on YouTube. That's it for me, Mean Dean, KliqPodcast, TOP. Check us out.